Welcome to Talking Heads, a project of the Africa Centre based in Cape Town. Each week, we bring you the experts, mavericks, and the thought leaders who are demanding we think differently about who and what it means to be African.
Often, there are these notions that certain ailments, especially those concerning our mental states versus our physical states, are culturally attuned. For some people, the idea of needing mental therapy is seen as Western or un-African. Food eating disorders regarded as something for middle-class white children. A friend told me a moving story. A doctor working in rural Nigeria at an antenatal clinic had a woman come in. She presented with several complaints, but it took the experienced doctor a while to diagnose her with postnatal depression. Despite considering himself sensitive to such stereotypes, he'd succumbed to the idea that postnatal depression was something that happened to urban dwellers, mostly middle class and mostly white. I think it's an important discussion, and today we're having the same discussion about ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. My guest, Leila Benelli, is a radio journalist, jewelry designer, mother of four, and a writer. In 2004, her first son, 6 years old, was diagnosed with ADHD. Feeling bullied by the doctors and schools to put her son on a course of Ritalin, Leila sought alternatives. She trailed through homeopaths and various alternative methods, and finally, thinking there must be other mothers out there who could benefit from her experience, in 2010, her book, Help! My Child is Driving Me Crazy, was published. I'm Yewande Omotoso, and today I'm talking with Leila Benelli. Leila, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Yewande. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I thought a best place to start, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Could you briefly explain what that is?
Okay, there's quite a lot of different explanations that people have come up with, but the most basic and the most congruent with the majority of schools of thought is that it's a neurobehavioral disorder, which means that there's a neurological aspect, but that it's predominantly relating to the behavior of the child. A lot of experts have said that it is as a result of chemical imbalance. Then there's also the school of thought that says, well, it's maybe not so much the chemical imbalance, but there's other factors involved. But in the basic, it says that it's a neurobehavioral disorder and it affects the concentration and ability of the child to focus on one task given at a given time for a duration of period. They also have symptoms of hyperactivity, which means they can't sit still, they're very restless, they move around a lot. They're very impulsive, so they will shout out instead of waiting their turn. And then you also get children on the other side of the scale that are very inattentive, which means they are your daydreamers. Their mind will drift off while the teacher is talking.
I came across some research conducted by the Child and Adolescent Unit in the Neuropsychiatric Hospital in Enugu in Nigeria. And it speaks of a debate that exists, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, as to whether ADHD is a cultural construct. There's sometimes this idea that certain conditions are for the white community and not the black community. Do you think ADHD is one of those? And if so, what's the danger of that kind of thinking?
Unfortunately, that is a misconception. I think like with many other things like AIDS and HIV and postnatal depression, all those myriad of conditions have certain misnomers where people are thinking it's exclusive to a certain group of people. It's not the case. Unfortunately, when we have those misnomers and people believe that, a lot of children go undiagnosed. The biggest problem is the secondary symptom of ADHD, in my opinion, which is the low self-esteem. Now, you can imagine if you take a child in a classroom and he's constantly being hammered for not doing his homework, forgetting his things at home, not listening in class, then the child starts thinking, I'm no good enough. So the child's ability to then do well in life as an adult does get affected. I'm sure you're very well aware there are many studies conducted in the type of education that is correct for ADHD kids or not. And is the current system actually prone to helping these kids or actually prone to not helping? Now, the number one and easiest solution is the medication. However, everybody is not comfortable with that. And do we need to go just to medication, or do we need to look at maybe we need to adjust the education and how our kids are being taught? So on the flip side, ADHD kids are very intellectual. They have a high IQ. They're very smart, very bright. And often, if we can just find out what the child is good at, where the strengths lies, and then focus on the strengths, then you'll have a brilliant child.
I want you to talk a bit more about, firstly, how the diagnosis happens.
Most of the time, children's ADHD are picked up in school, and this was the case with me. When my son started going to grade 1, the teacher within the first week said, the child's ADHD, please take him to the psychiatrist. He needs to go on medication. Of course, being all defensive and not wanting to accept what the teacher said, I realized, of course, in hindsight that the teacher was absolutely correct. However, the way she carried the information over and the way I was handled and treated, I think, was extremely unfair and incorrect. I eventually gave in and said, okay, I'll try the medication and see if it works. We went to the psychiatrist, and there's a questionnaire that you need to fill in. The doctor will look at the questionnaire, and it's basically a couple of questions like,
does your child fidget a lot, or does your child struggle to sit still for longer than 5 minutes?
So the form was filled in. The doctor looked at it 5 minutes and looked at it and asked me a few questions and said,
okay, fine, your child's definitely ADHD. Here's Ritalin. I will start on 5 milligrams, and after 2 weeks you'll come back and then we'll reassess.
I didn't really like the effect that the Ritalin had. I have to say that for some children, Ritalin works immediately. For other children, Ritalin is the worst, and you'll have to go maybe through 2 or 3 other medications to find the right one that works for you. The symptoms I saw when the medication started wearing off was very scary for me. At the time, it reminded me of somebody that's rehabilitating from drugs and having withdrawal symptoms. I phoned the doctor and said, this is what I'm experiencing, and answer was,
you need to up the dose to 10 milligrams at 2 weeks.
I wasn't prepared to do that. I found a homeopathic doctor. We did all sorts of different alternative avenues explored. I cut out all the bad foods like the E numbers you get, MSGs, and all the things that make you hyper. So many different factors. There was a slight improvement in his behavior. However, he still had the distractibility aspect. And I decided with all of the other modalities, I'm going to just continue putting in the effort and making sure that I put in all the time and energy that I can into this child to help him at home. It's a very long road when you go through the diagnosis, and one has to be very careful not to fall in a trap where what the doctor says goes. I think one doctor gave me the best advice ever, and she said, a mother's gut feeling is so important, and sometimes you just have to go on your gut. And if it doesn't feel right, then keep trying and keep searching for something until you find something that you feel comfortable with.
You got so involved with it, and you did so much of your own research, you were drawn to write a book. What inspired you to go in that direction?
I just felt there's a gap. We really need to help the teachers understand what we as parents go through. And I thought maybe there are other mothers that feel the same way. And then I started speaking to other parents, and I really got confirmation that, yes, we would rather hear this from a mom. So I did a few talks at schools and offered my services and said, listen, I'm happy to come and address the school and the parents if they are interested. And that grew to having a workshop. I decided then to write a book. The book came from personal experience, so it's basically a hand guide for moms. If this happens in the home, here's a quick tip and solution of how to cope. When the child's throwing a tantrum, how do I do that? How do I create a routine for this child? How do I become creative enough to stay ahead of the child? At the moment, I've got the DVD. I've also have an audio CD, and then I've got the book. Perhaps the best advice that I can give parents is to go back to basics. Following the basics of life is ultimately the easiest way to eliminate the majority of the problems. Eat a healthy diet, drink lots of water, do lots of exercise, and spend quality time with your kids.
What do you experience as the impact with parents you've worked with and families you've worked with? What's that been like?
Children with ADHD thrive on routine. So this is the other thing that I teach parents, and it was very successfully taught. If you empower the kids with a timetable and a specific routine and strong discipline, your life becomes a lot easier. I'm not saying the problems disappear. It doesn't disappear ever. It just gets a bit easier. So I think just finding that support, and I'm hoping that what I'm doing is giving parents that little bit of peace of mind and a little bit of support and a little bit of insight.
You know, I think often parents feel powerless. I'm not a parent myself, but I can imagine parents feel powerless when their child is diagnosed, for instance, by a doctor. You know, they feel at the mercy of the medical world, the mercy of someone who knows a lot more than they do. I would think rural or working class parents all the more so. I suspect there are many children who remain undiagnosed and so without the necessary support to help them thrive.
Kids are amazing, you know, they dream big and they want to experience the world. And sometimes we damper that because we have so many different expectations from them. I think we just need to realize what it is like to be a child and go back there. We need to let the kids dream and love them for who they are, and I think we'll see little superstars emerging no matter where they're from.
Leila, thank you for the work you do, really, and thank you for the difference it makes. We're looking forward to your new book.
I will definitely keep you posted, Yewande. Thank you so much.
To find out more about Leila Benelli, her work on ADHD, and to listen to other podcasts, visit www.talkingheads.org.za.